Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I want to talk about Janet Yellen's new proposed unrealised gains tax. This would effectively tax the apes on any gains you've already made, even though you haven't even sold. So stay tuned and let's make some money. But before I dive into the video, if you haven't already, be sure to check out the AMC related merch in my store, linked in the description below. I'm currently wearing the Space Ape hoodie, which is one of my favourites, along with the To The Moon t-shirt. And also, if you haven't already, be sure to check out the link in the description below to the private Discord. There we talk about AMC and GameStop, but also other stocks and cryptocurrencies like Shiba Inu before they explode. And now I want to dive straight in with the key information. So, let's start by hearing about what Janet Yellen had to say about the new proposed tax.
That Senator Wyden and the Senate Finance Committee have been looking at that would impose a tax on unrealized capital gains on liquid assets held by extremely wealthy individuals, billionaires. I wouldn't call that a wealth tax, but it would help get at capital gains, which are an extraordinarily large part of the incomes of the wealthiest individuals. And right now, escape taxation until they're realized, and often they're unrealized, and at death benefit from so-called step-up of basis. So it's not a wealth tax, but a tax on unrealized capital gains of exceptionally wealthy.
So effectively what Janet Yellen is proposing here is a tax on unrealised gains. You would get taxed every single year on your unrealised gains instead of getting taxed once at the point of sale when you realise those gains and incur capital gains taxes. Now the problem here is that obviously if you don't realise your gains, you don't actually have any physical cash to pay the tax with. So what Janet Yellen is asking you to do is find cash from elsewhere to pay your tax on your gains on AMC that you haven't even realised yet because you haven't even sold. Now yes, Janet Yellen does specifically say here that it is going to be a tax mostly for billionaires, but at the same time I don't think it will be a tax that applies solely to billionaires. I don't really think they'd let that happen. They obviously want this tax to apply to everyone, and probably mostly people like you and I, the regular retail investors, that don't really have that cash to pay the tax with until they realise their gains. So she did also specifically mention the step-up basis here as well. That's where somebody dies and passes their unrealised gains or their unrealised assets to the next of kin. The next of kin doesn't actually inherit the original cost price for tax purposes, they inherit a new cost price at the point of death for their tax purposes, and therefore all of those unrealised gains that would have happened beforehand, before the death, effectively goes untaxed. Now obviously it is important to make sure all of those unrealised gains are actually taxed when they pass across, rather than just creating a new cost basis. But I don't think the way to go about that is by creating a new tax on the unrealised gains. They effectively just need to make a specific ruling to make sure that that portion that previously wasn't taxed is now taxed after the cost basis moves across to the next of kin. There's a post here from Mackims that says, here's what's really going on with the Janet Yellen taxing unrealised gains situation. It's not what you all think. And he says, here's what's currently going on. Old billionaires that have a ton of money end up passing away, and the assets that the person was holding at the time of death are then deemed unrealised gains because the person holding them has died. This is then passed on to their children, but the gains are never taxed because as the transfer happens, the assets get a step-up basis, basically meaning that that original cost gets stepped up to this new cost for tax purposes, which is the cost at the time of death. She is currently proposing that an estate tax be applied to those assets that are currently passed on tax-free for billionaires or individuals that have made $100 million or more annually for the last 3 years. And that's probably not you or me right now. And that's also only for stocks we held at the time of our deaths that were not unrealised, not for any stocks you are holding while you're still alive. Therefore, at the moment, this will only affect less than 1,000 Americans of our population of 338 million. And he says, honestly, tax those people, I don't care. They should be taxed, and tax loopholes such as billionaires storing a ton of their wealth in equities when they're about to die and then passing those assets onto their children tax-free is rubbish. It should be taxed like anything else. But I think it's also important to remember that Janet Yellen probably isn't working on our side like the rest of the SEC and the rest of Congress haven't been so far. And therefore, if this proposed tax is ever passed, it's more than likely going to be passed in a way that does also impact regular investors like you and I, rather than just wealthy billionaires. I'm sure those billionaires will basically counter the proposal and say, what about the regular investors that also have unrealized gains? Those should be taxed as well. And then if it ever does get passed, it will probably be passed in that way and would impact us as well. Now, you also probably know that there's a court case going on today between Citadel Securities and the SEC. I'll leave a link to this post down in the description below because the court case is being live streamed, so you can watch it as it unfolds. Citadel is suing the SEC for implementing delimit orders on the Investors Exchange or IEX. Why? Because delimit orders let the IEX take away Citadel's ability to rip off retail investors. So here goes. Delimit orders level the playing field against high-frequency arbitrage. Essentially, Citadel uses arbitrage to take advantage of price discrepancies on the lit exchanges. They do this by using the delay in literal milliseconds it takes for your order to get to the market and profit on the difference. But how do they do that? Well, they have expensive algorithms and physical cabling that gives them that advantage of literal milliseconds. The delimit order lets the IEX use an AI to prevent predatory market makers from using this latency to front-run your orders. In other words, delimit orders let you pay the price quoted in the market before it moves away from you. Basically meaning you get the price that you pay when you place an order. Now, in a cynical attempt to paint this as protecting retail orders and protecting retail investors, Citadel is suing the SEC to prevent the IEX from using those delimit orders. And this matters because the SEC, by allowing delimit orders, is removing one of the two big ways that Citadel and others effectively make their money. If Citadel can't manipulate the market and can't front-run orders, they can't make any more money, and therefore they can't make any more liquidity to add to their AMC short positions. Now, interestingly, another court case that I wanted to talk about is the January 2021 short squeeze trading litigation, which is actually still ongoing each and every single day, with new filings being made very regularly. I'll leave the link to these updated documents down in the description below. You can see that some of these documents you do have to buy and pay for, but some of them you can download as PDFs for free. And the further you go, more of them are available for free download. As you can see at the moment, there's 429 individual documents that have been filed since back in January. A lot of them have been filed in October and September and August, so there's a lot of reading to go through. But I do think it is good to see that this litigation and this lawsuit is actually still ongoing and hasn't just been brushed under the rug to unearth in 5 or 10 years' time. It is still ongoing each and every day. And now I also wanted to talk about AMC's correlation with other heavily shorted stocks. In the below screenshot I grabbed from Bloomberg, we see the price movement of 6 stocks over the time period covering January 4th to the present day. The stocks we see on this chart are AMC, GameStop, BlackBerry, kohrs, Bed Bath & Beyond, and NAKD or Naked Brands. For anyone who's not been following this saga, there are bad actors in the market. Short hedge funds or hedge funds that are betting against stocks in efforts to stifle the price action and growth of these stocks. While select figures of mainstream media are slowly coming around to recognising and acknowledging what is actually going on in the market, many still try to act as though nothing is wrong. With that said, let's have a look at the above chart. If you're noting similarities in the chart, you are not alone. What is displayed is what many of us apes or buy and hold retail investors would simply call market manipulation. However, there's another word that can sum up what we see here and is more recognised and accepted by smart money investors, which is correlation or, well, manipulated correlation. This is the screenshot and you can see, especially between the time period between June and present day, these stocks are literally mirroring each other almost on an exact day-by-day basis. So if the above screenshot is still not enough, let's look at some statistical data. also taken from Bloomberg using the correlation function. The below table, which also covers the period between January 4th to present day, perfectly and concisely illustrates the strength of correlation between our variables or the stocks. So how do we interpret this data? Below is some notes from my former statistics professor and some general guidelines for interpreting correlation data. So below 0.2 is weak correlation, between 0.2 and 0.5 is moderate correlation, and above 0.5 is strong correlation. So as you can see from that above matrix, there's 0 stocks that have weak correlation, 26% have moderate correlation, and a whopping 73% have that strong correlation. So you can see from largest to smallest, AMC has the most correlation and BlackBerry has the least correlation, basically meaning that AMC is the most heavily manipulated stock there because they're trying to make AMC look like everything else. And finally, Wired also made an interesting correlation between the number of failed to delivers and the price action. Notice how when you tend to get on the regulation SHO list, which restricts short sales even to market makers, that changes happen on the underlying stock very quickly. Then one day, poof, they all disappear. As you can see, for example, back in GameStop before January, there was tons and tons of failed to delivers popping up almost everywhere. The price then rocketed off, and ever since, all of those failed to delivers have majestically disappeared. We can also see from AMC that back in January, before the run-up, there were tons and tons of failed to delivers, and then they majestically kind of disappeared when AMC did run up. Again, they did kind of come back in April and May, and again when AMC ran up. Ever since, they've basically just disappeared again. And this just shows the manipulation in place and how these hedge funds kick the can until they can no longer kick the can any longer, and these failed to delivers start popping up in a massive way, and then they lose control and the price runs up. Obviously, because the price runs up, the hedge funds need to try and get back into control, otherwise they'll end up being liquidated and therefore increase their manipulation levels. Again, I think we're basically just waiting for these massive amounts of failed to delivers to start popping up again, and then we'll see AMC running again. Guys, be sure to let me know down in the comments below what you think about Janet Yellen's new proposed tax, which is most likely going to be made to affect the apes and tax us on our unrealized gains. And if you haven't already, be sure to check out the AMC related merch on my store, linked in the description below, to pick yourself up some cool AMC related merch and show your support. And as always guys, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out some of my others. Alternatively, subscribe to the channel and ding that notification bell, because that way you'll be alerted when I upload a new video. Cheers.